We continue now at the top of Daf Kuf Daled Amud Aleph and Mesechet Yevamos. This is Yevamos Daf 104a. The Gemara continues, V'shel ir hanidachas. Let's say you have a shoe of an ir hanidachas. V'shel zoken ha'aseh l'chvodo. Or let's say you have the shoe of an elder that's made for his honor. It means to say that he wants to be buried in that shoe. So again, and on the previous summit it said tikroves avodas kochavim. Let's say it's a shoe that is an offering for an avodah zara. So all of these cases, lo tachlots, you shouldn't lechatchila use it for chalitza. But further, v'im cholza chalitza sapsula. But if you do use it for chalitza, that chalitza is going to be possible. And so the Gemara continues, Amar le Ravina le Ravashi. So Ravina said to Ravashi, Ma'ishna zoken ha'asi l'chvoda. What's the difference that by an elder that it's made for his honor, meaning for his burial, the lav lehilucha of it, we say that's not made for walking and therefore it's not good for chalitza. So devei dina nami, so the shoe that is kept in the court as well, they used to keep a shoe in the court for the purpose of chalitza, so also that one lav lehilucha of it, that's also not made for walking. So why is that allowed? So Amar le, so he said back to him, Ilu maski bei shalucha de beidina. If let's say the shliach habezin would walk using that shoe, meaning if he would use it for that purpose, mi kapital adaina, would the judge be makbid about it? Of course not. In other words, it is allowed to be used for walking, and therefore it is going to be good to be used for chalitza. Rashi over here says, V'shel ir hanidachas, if it belongs to an ir hanidachas, that's a city that has to be destroyed because they worshipped avodah zara. Nami l'sreifa kaima, that also is meant to be burned, and that's why it's not going to be good if it is used for chalitza. V'shel zaken aseh l'chvodo, let's say it belongs to an elder that's going to be used for his honor, meaning to say l'tachriche misa, again, it's the garments that he's going to be buried in. Hol v'lav lilucha avid lav nalhu, so since it's not made for walking in, it's not considered to be a shoe. And then he asked, the ve'dina nami sandal shayel bezin umiyuchad l'chalitza. Again, they used to have a sandal that was in Bezdin designated for chalitza. He wanted to know what the difference is, and the answer was the difference is that can be used for walking. Theoretically, that is not the case if it is meant for burial shrouds. That is all it can be used for. It cannot be used for walking in whatsoever. And the Gemara continues with the Mishnah, Cholza belayla chalitzasa kasher. According to the Tanakama, if the chalitza is done at night, that is going to be kosher. For Rebbe Lazar posel, but Rebbe Lazar says it's possible, it's no good if it is done at night. Besmol, if it is done with the left foot, chalitzasa psula, then it's going to be possible. For Rebbe Lazar machshir, but Rebbe Lazar says that is going to be kosher. And the Gemara says, Lema b'ha kamifligli. Let us say that the machlokus between the Tanakama and Rebbe Lazar in terms of whether it can be done at night is in the following issue. The Marsavar makshinon rivim lenegoim. One says that we compare money cases to cases of leprosy. Now, chalitza is considered to be a monetary case because it has monetary ramifications in terms of the ksuba. So one opinion says we compare that to situations of negoim, situations of tsaras, and tsaras is something that can only be inspected during the daytime, and so therefore over here also chalitza has to be done during the day. Umar savar lo makshinon rivim lenegoim, and the other one says no, we do not compare monetary cases to tsaras, and therefore there's no requirement that it has to be done during the day. The Gemara says, lo, no, everybody agrees there's no comparison between monetary cases and saras. And the Gemara has a proof for this. The imakshinan, because if we did compare them, afilu gemardin belayla namilo, then you wouldn't even be able to conclude a case at night, and that's not true. When it comes to monetary cases, you are allowed to conclude. You're allowed to have the gemardin at night, and therefore there is no comparison. And so therefore, what is the machlokas over here? Here by chalitza, the machlokas is as follows. Mar savar chalitza kitchilas din damya. One says the chalitza is considered like the beginning of a court case, and when it comes to monetary cases, the beginning of a court case needs to be during the day, and therefore, when it comes to chalitza as well, it needs to be during the day. Umar savar, and the other opinion holds no, chalitza kigmar din damya. Chalitza is like the finishing of a court case, and therefore, just like the finishing of a monetary case can take place at night, so too chalitza can take place at night. And Rashi over here explains Linegoyim, again a comparison of monetary cases and saras, kol riv v'chol nega. The pasuk says riv and nega together. Ma negoyim riyosim biyom, just like the negoyim, they're inspected during the day. T'chsiv v'yom heros boaf rivim biyom, so too when it comes to monetary cases. V'chalitza din hu degov ksuba. So Rashi says chalitza also is considered a monetary case because she collects her ksuba. Afilu gemar din namilo. So again, if we would make the comparison fully, then even a gemar din of dinei mamanis cannot be done at night. V'anon tanan dinei mamanis done in bayom v'gomer b'layla. We see that's the opposite in the Mishnah. When it comes to dinei mamanis, you're allowed to judge. You have to start the judgment during the day, but you can finish it at night. And so the question the Gemara in the end says is whether chalitza is kitchilas din dami. Is it like the beginning of a court case? The nafkalan b'sanhedrin bechod dinei mamanis the tchilas din bayom, because we do learn out in Sanhedrin that the beginning of a court case has to be during the day. Or no, do we say it's like a gemar din and therefore it can take place at night? And the Gemara continues, Rabba Barchia Katusfa, Rabba Barchia from Tesafan, Avar Uvda B'muk, Uvyechidi Uvalayla. He did a chalitza with a muk, which is a slipper that is not made out of leather, and he did it by himself. There were no other judges, and he did it at night. So Amar Shmuel said, Kama Rav Guvrei, David Kiechida, how mighty is this person that he's following all these das yochids, he's following all these individual opinions against the majority. And the Gemara now says, my kasha, what exactly is Shmuel's kasha? The assumption here is that Shmuel is saying this as a criticism, so where do we find that these are das yochids? Imuk stamatanya, if you're talking about the fact that he used the slipper that wasn't made out of leather, that there's a stam brisa that supports that. Elil, and if it's at night, stamatanya, there also, we just learned in our stam mishnah that if it's done at night, it's going to be okay, meaning to say it's an unattributed opinion in our mishnah that says that. So those indicate that the halacha does follow for those things. Elo yechidi kakashale, rather, what Shmuel was bothered by was the fact that he did it alone, that he did not have the requisite number of judges. Heichi avid biyechidi diyechida katani la, how could he do it alone as the only judge? Because that's only a minority opinion. The Tanan, as we learned in the Mishnah, this is the Mishnah coming up on Amid Beis, Cholza b'shnayim, let's say the chalitza is done just in front of 2 people, O b'shlosher, let's say it's done in front of 3 people, v'nimtza echad mehen karov apostle, but it turns out that one of the judges is no good because he's a relative or he's disqualified. So the Tanakama says, chalitzasa pesula, the chalitza is going to be pasul, it requires 3 people. For Rabbi Shimon, Rabbi Yochanan Hasanler machshirim. Rabbi Shimon and Rabbi Yochanan Hasanler, they say it's okay, even with just 2 people. And there was also an incident with one person, that he did a chalitza, just him and her, there were no judges at all, and they did it in the prison. And that story came in front of Rabbi Akiva, and he said that it was fine. V'yomer Rav Yosef bar Menyumi, Yomer Rav Nachman, and Rav Yosef bar Menyumi said in the name of Rav Nachman, Ein halacha ka'oso hazog. Going on that Mishnah, the halacha is not like this pair, meaning the halacha is not like Rabbi Shimon and Rabbi Yochanan Hasanler. In any case, you see over here that the opinion, let's say, of Rabbi Akiva that it's done privately, that's just a das yachid. And in terms of Rabbi Shimon and Rabbi Yochanan Hasanler, it says over here that the halacha doesn't follow that pair. So in any case, the question is, how could he have done this chalitza alone, that he was the sole judge? That would seem to be following a das yachid of Rabbi Akiva. And the Gemara says further, if you want, I could say even additional reasons why it was difficult what he did. It could be that everything that he did is really just a das yachid. Tanya, because we learned in a brayso, Rabbi Yishmael ben Rabbi Yossi said, Ani ro'isias Rabbi Yishmael ben Elisha, I saw Rabbi Yishmael ben Elisha shecholatz b'muk b'yechidi uvalayla, that he did it in these 3 ways. He did it with a slipper that wasn't leather, he did it by himself, and he did it at night. So you see, it's just a das yachid of Rabbi Yishmael ben Elisha. So again, that was the criticism. How could he follow this minority opinion? And Rashi over here says, "B'muk afal pi she'eno shalor." Again, even though the slipper is not made of leather, Kama Rav Guvrei b'loshen Ganai Amra. Again, this was a criticism of him, that how could he follow this das yochid? Imuk stam matanya. So first the Gemara said that muk is a stam brisa, bebrisa d'la'el, bekava kiteya b'muk b'smichas haraglaim. That's one of the cases in the list. Laila stamat tanina. Also, when it comes to night, that's in our Mishnah. B'masnisan chalitzasa ksher. It says the chalitza is kosher at night as well. So those 2 things have support. But b'yechid Yechida Tanila, the fact that he did it alone, that's just a das yachid. But Masnisin de Tanano v'Maisel ifnei Rabbi Akiva v'Hechsher, like we said, that was just the opinion of Rabbi Akiva in the Mishnah on the following Amud. And the Gemara continues at the 2 dots, B'smol chalitzasa v'chulu. Again, the Mishnah said there was a machlokas tanoim, when you do chalitza on the left foot, is that going to be kosher or not? The way the Mishnah had it, the Mishnah said that according to the Tanakama, it's not going to be good, and according to Rebbe Lazar, it is going to be good. And the Gemara says, my time of the Rabbanan. What's the reason of the Rabbanan that it's problematic? Amar Ula says, Yalfinon regel mi mitzor. We learn out regel. It says regel here by chalitza. It also says regel by the purification process of a mitzor. It's talking about placing it on the big toe of his regel. Malahalon diyamin, afkan diyamin. Just like over there in the purification process of the mitzor, we're talking about the right foot. So too over here by chalitza, we're talking about the right foot. Rebbe Lazar lo yalif regel mi mitzor. But the Gemara asks, does Rebbe Lazar not learn out regel from mitzor? Vatanya, but we have a brisa that says Rebbe Lazar Omer Rebbe Lazar says, Minayin l'ritzia shi ba'ozen hayemonis. How do you know that when we pierce the ear of the Eved Ivri, it has to be the right ear? Nemar kan ozen, it says over here ozen, it says ear. V'nemar lahalon ozen, and it says again by the purification process of the mitzorah, the word ozen. Ma lahalon yamin, afkan yamin, just like over there it's the right ear, so too over here it's the right ear. So you see Rebbe Lazar also has a requirement of right, and he's learning it out from the same thing. He's learning it out from the purification process of the mitzorah. And so the Gemara says, Amar Rav Yitzchak bar Yosef, Amar Rav Yochanan. Rav Yitzchak bar Yosef says in the name of Rav Yochanan, Muchlefes Hashita, you actually have to switch around the opinions in our Mishnah. It's actually Rebbe Lazar who has the requirement of right. He's the one that says if you use the left by chalitza, it's no good. And the Rabbanan would be the ones to say that it is okay to use the left. And the Gemara continues, Rava Amar, Rava says, Liolam lo sepech, you don't need to reverse anything. And there's actually a reason that Rebbe Lazar makes a distinction by ozen, where he requires right, but by regel he does not. Ozen mufni, and the reason is because the word ozen is actually a free word, and so we can make the gzera shava. Regel lo mufni, but the word regel is not a free word, it's needed in the context of the pasuk, and therefore we don't make the gzera shava. So the Gemara says, V'chi lo mufni my pircha ika. Now even if it's not free, the only reason we wouldn't do it is because there's some kind of refutation. Why is it that we would not want to learn from the purification process of mitzora to the case of chalitza? And so the Gemara explains, Ika lemifrach, there is a refutation. Ma'ala mitzora shekain ton eitz erez ve'ezov u'shnito las. When it comes to the mitzora, there's all these other requirements, like using the cedar wood, and using the hyssop, and using the scarlet thread, and therefore to learn from mitzora to the case of chalitza you can't do unless it's mufni. And so therefore, again, that's why when it comes to ozen, which is a free word, Rebbe Lazar makes the gzera shava, but he does not make the gzera shava when it comes to regel. And Rashi over here explains, regel mi mitzora, we learn out from regel by mitzora, dechsiv al boen raglo hayamanis. Again, it says on the big toe of the right foot, v'nemar lahalan ozen by mitzora, it says ozen by mitzora, ozen mufna. So again, the Gemara said by ozen, those are free words. Mishnei tzadin, meaning it's free on both ozens are free, bein by mitzora, bein benirtza, by both mitzora and by the piercing of the ear. Tekrad the mitzora, ani miyusar legamri, kida amrim v'menachos parakama, yad lekmitza, regel lechali. Ozen l'ritzia. Over there, when it's talking about by mitzora ani, by the poor mitzora, it is completely a free word that is mentioned in menachos. Begabe ritzia trei ozno ksivi, also by the piercing of the ear, it says ozen twice. V'ratza adonav es ozno v'nasata ba'ozno v'adela, so it says it twice, it repeats it. Therefore, you see it's an extra word, it's a free word. But again, lo mufni, it's not free by regel mishnei tzad, and it means it's not free on both sides. Ela mitzad echad, it's only free on one side. The mitzora miyusar, because the word regel by mitzora actually is extra. Aval b'chalitza lo, but the word by chalitza, it's used in context v'leka elachad. Therefore, you only have one free word in terms of the gzera shava. Because Rebbe Lazar mufna mitzad echad lemeidim, Rebbe Lazar holds that if it's free on one side, you can learn the gzera shava in main teshuva if there's no refutation. However, v'miesh lahashem meshivan, but if there's any kind of refutation, you can refute such a gzera shava. V'chi lo mufni my pircha ika. The Gemara said, well, what is the refutation? Mufna mitzad echad lemeidim meshivan, like we just said, if it's free on one side, you can learn it, but you can refute it as well. V'acha my pircha ika, what is the refutation? It's actually from here that we learn out in general that Rebbe Lazar holds that if it's mufna mitzad echad, we can learn the gzera shava, but we can also refute it if there's a logical refutation. And the Gemara continues with the Mishnah, Cholza v'rakaka. Let's say she does the chalitza, meaning she removes the shoe and she also spits, avalo kara, but she doesn't read the psukim that she is supposed to recite, chalitzasa kasheira, so then the chalitza is still kosher. Kara v'rakaka, if she recites the psukim, if she does the spitting, avalo cholza, but she doesn't remove the shoe, chalitzasa psula, that's going to be a chalitza that is pasul. Cholza v'kara, let's say she does the chalitza, she recites the psukim, avalo rakaka, but she doesn't spit, so Rebbe Lazar omer chalitzasa psula, Rebbe Lazar says the chalitza is psula. Rabbi Akiva omer chalitza is ksheira. Rabbi Akiva says the chalitza is ksheira. We'll continue with this discussion in the next video on Daf Kuf Dalid Amud Beis.